Today's daf we're going to be learning is Bava Batra Daf Ayin Daled. It's the daf for Shabbat. We're going to have an interesting daf. We're going to be continuing in the stories that we started yesterday and getting on to all sorts of crazy stories. It's a bit of a long daf for Shabbat daf, but in malasot, as they say. And with that, we'll be starting. Today's daf is dedicated by Jessica Jobanik and Harold Kinsberg in celebration of the second birthday of their beloved son, Shmuel Meir, Sammy. We love you and learn from you every day. Mazal tov. Okay, we'll get started with the bottom of we'll get started from the bottom of Ayin Gimel Amud Bet, starting from Rabba bar Chana, who is telling these stories of this Arab merchant who he sees, who tells him all sorts of strange things and shows them all sorts of things. So Amarli, we're going to start from the last line. Ta'ach velach mitei midbar. The Arab merchant keeps tempting him and saying, "Oh, do you want me to show you something?" And clearly understanding that Rabba bar Chana was curious, he said, "Why don't I show you the people who died in the desert?" Az le chazitinu. So he showed me. Damu kimandimi basme, and they all look like they were drunk. Veganu aparkid, and they were lying on their backs with their faces up. Okay, and some people learn from, they say the source for the fact that this is how we bury people comes from this story. And one of their legs was up, their knee, kind of their leg was kind of like at a 90-degree angle. And the Arab merchant went under the knees of this person while he was riding on a camel with a sword or a spear in his hand and didn't even touch the person. This is showing how they were massive, the people there, or at least this one person there was massively huge, and that even going under his leg was so much space that the merchant didn't touch him at all. Now, Rabba bar Chana took one of the corners of tchelet, meaning he cut the corner of the tzitziot of one of the people. Below him, all of a sudden, he couldn't walk. Amarli, dilma shakalt midi minayu. So the Arab merchant said, maybe you took something from one of them because that's why you can't walk. Ahadre. So I gave it back. He said, give it back. Digmire, because we know that man de shakel midi minayu lo mistagile. Comes this Arab merchant, again, he's full of information, and he said it's known that if you take something away from one of the people who died, again, these are all the people who were part of the Meraglim punishment, the spies punishment, that they all had to die before the nation went into Israel. And he said, if you take anything from one of them, lo mistagile, you won't be able to walk. What the connection is, again, you could spend a whole, hours on each of these stories and try to analyze them and read different commentaries who try to analyze them and come up with an allegorical meaning to them. I'm not going to both have the time to do that nor the wherewithal to do that right now. These stories are definitely out there, and what they mean I'm leaving it open. Azal ahadrate. So I went and I gave it back, tells Rabba bar Chana. And all of a sudden I could walk again. And by the way, this fits in with this theme of people from the outside being able to shed light on things that we might not have seen ourselves. Okay, maybe we'll talk about this theme. What I will do, even though I won't come up with all the allegorical meanings of all these stories, but I will try to take out a few themes that we can see that go through some of these stories, right? Starting with, many of these are, while I was on a boat, I saw something that kind of breaking out of our little world sometimes sheds light on things, and sometimes having other people explain to us things, right? Specifically, a lot of language is learned from the people at the water because they meet lots of people who speak different languages and understand the etymology of words. So there's this idea of other people shedding light and also breaking out of your usual framework to open up, be able to see things more clearly possibly about your own life. Anyway, what happened here? So, Ki'ata the Kamedu Rabbanan, Amrele. Now, when I got back to the rabbis, Rabbi Chana continues and says, they said to me, Kol Abba Chamra v'chol bar Chana sichsa. Every Abba is a donkey, meaning like stupid like a donkey, and every bar Chana is an idiot, or some sort of word that means something like that, part of the language. What does he mean here? Well, the rabbis first of all, his name was Rabba. Now, Rabba is short for Rabbi Abba. So he's Abba, and he's a bar Chana. So they said anyone with that name is clearly a fool. Lamai hilchata. So they said to him, why are you such a fool? Because why'd you cut off the corner of their clothing? Lameda ikebet shama ikebet hillel. We're assuming it's because you wanted to know, is the halacha like Beit Shammai or is the halacha like Beit Hillel? You wanted to see what did their tzitziot look like. This is a great concept, right? That again, if I talk about someone from the outside, like this Arab merchant, bringing him to see the people who died in the desert so that we could learn halacha from that, right? That's a whole interesting thing. That, going to someone from the outside can kind of help us figure out halacha. What's so fascinating about this halacha? Why do you want to know? Well, there's halacha much later, and they want to know, what did the people in the desert do, right? So even though we know the oral Torah developed, and it's very likely they weren't necessarily doing the same things we're doing now, but he wanted to check. Now, why was this such an interesting machloket? Well, there's a machloket between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel. Do you use 3 strings or 4 strings and then fold them over? And then how many ties do you have? And it's actually one of the few cases that we hold like Beit Shammai. So perhaps that's why it was so fascinated by this halacha to know, well, did they also hold like Beit Shammai? Because we don't usually hold like Beit Shammai. So come the rabbis and they say, is that why you took it? Because you wanted to know if we hold like Beit Shammai or Beit Hillel? If that's the case, now, there's 2 interpretations here. There's actually a whole bunch, but let's go with this. Either, well, before you gave it back, you should have at least counted. You should have noticed and taken note of what it looked like. Or perhaps you didn't need to steal it. You could have just looked. And that, why do you even start in the first place by taking it? So either why did you take it in the first place, or if you took it already, before you returned it, at least you should have checked. Amar le, ta'ach velach har Sinai. Okay, second story for today. So now the Arab merchant says to him, I can show you Har Sinai if you want. Again, trying to pique his interest. So what does he say? Of course, he wants to see it. Azle, so I went. Chazai de Hadra le akraba. I saw that there were, notice this word Hadra. Okay, Hadra came before, a Hadre, return it. Here, it doesn't really mean return in this case, or that unclear exactly how to read this word here, but Hadra le akbare, it seems to be they encircled the mountain. It was all scorpions around. And they stood tall like white donkeys, or somehow they look like white donkeys. And not sure the significance of all this. Shamati bat kol she'omeret, oili shenishbati. He hears a heavenly voice come down that says, oili, oh, so upset that I took this oath. And now that I took this oath, who can undo my oath? It's a little bit strange. Only neders, vows usually are undone. Oaths don't really become undone. But it seems like there is some way to undo this oath, and it's really God saying, I'm so sorry I took this oath. I wish I could undo the oath. Now, the assumption of what this meant, and the assumption the rabbis are going to say, is the way they're going to understand this, when Rabba Bar Chana tells them, is that God feels terrible that he took this oath that we're going to go into exile, and he wants to undo the oath and let his people return. So ki anta the kamei de Rabbanan amrle kol abachamer kol bar chana sichsa. Again, they're insulted him, and they said, "You fool! Hayal chalomal mufar lecha. You should have said mufar lecha. You were there. Okay, now you need 3 usually, but yachid mumche. If there's a specialist, you could have done it. Now, the whole concept, you could annul a vow of God's. God is all powerful. Can't God annul God's own vows? Yes, of course, that's a question. Again, we're not meant to understand these stories literally. But I think there's some other message going on here, and that's in the continuation. Now, why did Rabba Bar Chana do this? Not because he didn't think he could annul a vow of God. No, theoretically he would have. But who saval dilma shvuata de mabulhu? Maybe God's referring to the oath of the Mabul. What was the oath of the flood? That God promised God will never bring destruction again upon the people. And he was worried that maybe that was what God was upset about. And this is what I think is interesting. And then the rabbis, just to finish the conversation, the rabbis say, Im kain oy li lama. Okay, the Rabbanan, the rabbis say, if that's the case, why did God say oy li? God wouldn't say woe to me. Woe to me is I'm so sad. God wouldn't be so sad that he didn't destroy the world and now he wants to destroy the world. That wouldn't be sadness, maybe anger. Okay, but sadness is, I can't believe I did this to my people and I want to undo it. Now, being in the times we're living in right now, I think this is a very interesting source. And I think it's kind of, whenever there's a tragedy going on, and it's interesting here, what's going on here is they're both looking from different perspectives. It's like a little like the optimist pessimist. And you have the rabbi saying, obviously, we're in a terrible situation, and God must be sad along with us and must want to undo what he did to us. And, and we could help him, which is also interesting to think about, right? That sometimes we feel we don't have a role. What can we do? No, it's up to us to do it. In other words, it's in our power. That's also another idea, by the way. It wasn't what I wanted to highlight right now, but it is another good idea here that there is something to do about it. Rabba Chana, in a sense, said, what can I do about it? It's not really what his response was. He was concerned that maybe God was saying, I'm destroying you. And in fact, I wish I could destroy you even more. And it's about, what do we think God is thinking? Now, it's not only what do we think God is thinking, but what do we think of the situation? Do we think we're not deserving of this? We should get out of this? Or do we think, wow, we're probably even deserving of much worse, and look how bad the world has become that, and this, by the way, isn't just about the Jewish people being destroyed, it's about the world being destroyed because of all the evil going on. So it's interesting in terms of perspectives of how one looks at the same situation from very different perspective. And that's why Rabba Chana didn't want to undo the oath, because he had no idea what oath it was. And maybe it'll make things worse. Sometimes you want to, another idea, by the way, is you want to help, but it actually sometimes can make things worse if you help. So you don't really want to make it any worse than it is. So it's a very interesting conversation here to think about. Let's continue. Next story, but same situation. Rabba Chana is still with this Arab merchant. So you want me to show you the people who got swallowed up in the ground in the Korach story, who all helped Korach, who basically went against Moshe and the leadership of the time? So he showed him two cracks in the ground, and smoke was coming out of them. He took, this Arab merchant took a pile of wool, or something of wool, right, a bunch of wool, and soaked it in water. And he put it at the tip of a spear. By the way, again, we have this spear. And he puts it into the ground. So he's got this wet ball of cotton, or of wool, actually, not cotton, of wool, soaked with water, puts it into the ground. And as soon as it went in there, right, when they took it, as it went in, and then when they took it out, it was totally burned, singed, which shouldn't happen if it was fully wet. Shows how much smoke was going on under there, how hot it was. Amali atzit mai shamat. So the Arab said to me, what did you hear? Shamat, okay, it's interesting, because first they said what they saw, but then he said, you must have heard something coming out of there. What did you hear? So Rabba Chana says, Shamit dahavu amrin Moshe v'Torah to'emet v'hein bada'in. I heard them say that Moshe and his Torah is truth, and they are, which meant themselves, are bada'im. They don't know anything. They're wrong. Or they're jokers. Badai is usually a joker. Okay, but Moshe and they had it all right, the leaders, we were wrong. Amarli kol tatan yoma, so he explains what's going on now, why he heard that. He says every 30 days, kol tatan yomi mahadar lehu, again, mahadar lehu, they get returned to. Okay, we're going to have a lot of returning going on here. I don't know what to make of it, but I am just pointing it out. Mahadar lehu gehenom lahacha kibasar b'kalacha. Gehenom brings them up to the surface every 30 days, like meat in a pot where it gets stirred up. And every 30 days they say the following thing: Moshe v'Torah to'emet v'hein bada'in. Amrali, another story. Okay, again, what to do with all this is a good question. Okay, for them, maybe we talk about, maybe the idea of returning, by the way, has to do with the theme I was talking about before, about changing your mind about things, opening your eyes to other things. Here, right, we also have what he saw and what he heard, and opening his eyes to things. And the people had to suffer a punishment in order to come to the truth. Only after, right? It's sad. Had they not, had they realized Moshe and his Torah was truth earlier, they would have been saved. They wouldn't be living in the ground here and swallowed up by the ground and killed, not living in the ground, dead in the ground. But they need to go through some process in this hell, where they get turned over a bunch of times, and every 30 days they come up and they say, we admit to what we did, what we misunderstood. Okay, let's go on. Amrali. Now we're going to talk about another thing that comes up a lot, and this is the connection of the land and the earth and the heavens, the connection of the water and the land, okay, the different parts of the universe. So I'm going to show you the place where the heaven and the earth meet. So he gave him just trying to remember all these words, right? Right. He gave him a basket of bread. A sal is a basket. And so while he was showing me, okay, now I realize why I'm confused. The Gimel sends us to the Hagon Rabba, who says there's some words missing here. I saw that it was made up of windows. And she showed me this place, and it's full of windows, okay, which is interesting. It's sort of, windows are always, again, they give you a different perspective when you look through a window. So you look from the earth to the heavens through this window. It's almost like it also kind of helps you to interpret maybe what's going on by having this window. Anyway, there's this window there. And what happens? So while Rabbi Chana was there, he takes his basket and he puts it on the window of the heavens or the firmament. Now, in the meantime, not that we knew he was davening, but he was Rabbi Chana, obviously davening. So he said, well, while I was davening, I finished davening. I went back to get my basket of bread and I couldn't find it. It was gone. So I said to the Arab merchant, are there thieves here that are stealing things? It's the firmament, the rotation of the firmament is happening. Natar Adam, now Hudahadar, again, it's returning. Okay, keep seeing this word over and over. Natar Adam, if you wait till tomorrow, at this time, you'll see it. Okay, this is also, right? As time goes on, things, this also has an interesting message, right? Wait till tomorrow at the same time and you'll understand, right? Now, you'll see it. It comes back. But also, we all know that as time goes on, you could see the same thing and it looks different to you from your perspective. And time passing also is a way of understanding, right? We talked about other people can help you understand different perspectives. And now also a passage of time can help you understand something you possibly didn't understand before. Rabbi Yochanan Mishtai. Okay, we're finished now with the Arab merchant and Rabbi Chana, and we're moving on to somebody else. And we're going to go back to the stories that we were talking about yesterday, which all start with, once upon a time, I was in a boat and I saw this. Okay, so we go back to the boat cases, which makes sense because we're in Hamocheret Hasfina. Rabbi Yochanan Mishtai. So Rabbi Yochanan said, one time I was on a boat. I saw a fish put its head out of the water. And his eyes look like two moons. And water came out of its gills it looked like two rivers in Surah. Okay, it was this unbelievable spectacle that I saw. Again, what to do with this? Good question, right? It's this kind of seeing these unbelievable things that you can't really see on the land or you can't really see in your everyday life. But when you go out to sea, all of a sudden you see all these crazy things. Again, what to make of this, to think about it. Okay, Rav Safra Mishtai. Rav Safra now tells. I was on a boat. Again, I saw a fish who put his head out of the water. And it had horns on it. Now, horns aren't usually on fish. They're usually on things that live on land. Here we're going to start with the crossover between the land and the sea. And it said it was engraved into the horns, Ana Biria Kala Shabayam. I'm a very light or small fish in the sea or creature in the sea. V'havina tlat mea parsa. And now there's different interpretations. Some say I am 300 parasang long, okay, which doesn't really mean I'm so small, but I think what he's saying is perspective, okay? So I seem very big to you, but azilna lepuma de leviathan. But I can fit in the mouth, and as I'm about to be eaten up by the leviathan, and this means you could think you're so strong, but often you get swallowed up. And the idea is to understand, and again, this is just possible interpretation, to understand that you're really not as big as you think you are, right? This is all about arrogance. I will be swallowed up by the leviathan. And Amaravashi, hahu izadiyamahu, the bechishavi lekarni. This is what they call the goat of the sea. Okay, Rashbam says, "Shekol sheyesh b'yabasha yesh bayam chutz min hachulda." In other words, the Rashbam has this idea, and this is what I was saying before. Again, you have to think about what it means, but for everything in the water, there's a parallel in the water. For everything in the water, it's parallel on land, or the reverse. And the bechisha, the Rashbam says, "Chofer bayam bekarneh levakesh achar mazonotai." It digs down in the ocean or in the sea to find its food. Ve'ile karne, and it has horns. Rabbi Yochanan Mishtai. Rabbi Yochanan said, "Zimna." We're back to Rabbi Yochanan. Zimna chad havaka zilna besfinta. One time I was on a boat. Sounds familiar. Bechazina nehu kartalita dahavu kamikabe ba'avanim tovot margaliyot. I found this crate full of precious stones, and pearls. V'hadrele, again hadrele mine de kfare de mikre kuresha. And encircling it, this is back to the encircling, right? To return, by the way, Hadran, right, is to go back. To go back again, it's also to make a circle, like to come full circle. So this fish called a kresha, which is a karish, which is a shark, was basically encircling it to prevent me from getting there. Nachit bar emorai la'atuye, a person, a diver, okay, we're now on Amud Bet, tried to go get it, right? This is whenever you see a treasure, okay, you want to get the treasure. Urigash ubai l'shimte la'amte. The shark got very excited and angry and wanted to bite off his leg, his calf. His thigh. Vishada zika dechala unachit. So this is very interesting. The diver, okay, divers go with all sorts of equipment. Well, within his equipment, he had somehow vinegar, and he took vinegar and he threw it at the shark, and the shark nachat. He went all the way down to the bottom, and he was able to access this crate with all the stones. However, nafik bat kala, a bat kol came out, a heavenly voice. Amarlan, mai itlachu mahade kartalita. What are you doing with that kartalita? What do you want with that crate? Now, it's very interesting because you could say that, the shark was a sign of God, meaning stay away from this. But some people don't take danger signs as danger and say, oh, I can be better than that. And they don't realize that maybe there's some reason why this creature is protecting it. And maybe it really is something that you shouldn't be accessing. So why did the heavenly voice comes out and says, what are you doing with this crate? Why do you want it? And the voice is going to continue and say, what's this crate doing here? Didibitu de Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa. This belongs to the wife of Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa. And what's it doing there? Da'atida de shad yetchelta ba litzadike la'alma da'ate. She is going to weave tchelet from these, or put tchelet in here. What exactly the stones are being used for the tchelet, not sure. But she is going to basically make tzitziot, okay, like make tzitzit. By the way, there are people there's a big machloket. Can women make tzitzit or not? And some use this as proof. The ones who say you can use this as proof that women can actually tie tzitzit from this story, which is crazy because it's just a crazy story. And it's talking about some futuresque time when she will be making tchelet for the tzaddikim in the world to come. And that's what this is doing here, and you shouldn't touch it, okay? Because of that, I just want to see one second what this has to do, why there's tilbot tchelet. I guess in this, I'm trying to think what she's going to connect. I guess, and that's what the connection of the tchelet to the pearls are. I think it's just a metaphor for the fact that there's something very unique going on here, and it's something that's saved for tzaddikim, and it's not meant for anybody to just take. And you should watch what you take. You know that certain things in this world are meant for a different time, for different people, and this is also, we're going to see in other stories also the dangers of searching for treasures, right? If we take these movies that are based on this Gemara and other Gemaras, like the Raiders of the Lost Ark movies and the powers of the Aron Habrit and all sorts of things, you're going to see this is the genre of stories we're going to get into now. Rabbi Yehuda Hindeva, okay, could be he's from India, and that's what it means. Some people explain it from Ethiopia. Mishtai, tell the following thing. Again, I was in a boat. This is the real story that sounds like from a Raiders of the Lost Ark movie. I found a beautiful stone. Tanina. Okay, again, you have the hadrale. Okay, in this case, it means it was, let me just check the translation to make sure I have it right. Right. Hadrale tanina, right. Sorry, I got confused by the word tanina. Tanin is from the tanin. There was either, you could translate it as a snake. It's unclear what the taninim are exactly, but some sort of reptile creature. So there was, again, Hadra encircled by a snake. So again, it had this protective thing around it to stay away from it. Hamidbar emorai again, some diver comes in and tries to get it. So the tanin came and wanted to swallow up the boat. This is why some people say it can't be a snake. How could a snake swallow a boat? Anyway, wanted to swallow the boat. Ata pishkansa. Okay, what's a pishkansa? Okay, so the Rashbam tells us it's an orev nekeva, a female raven. Female raven comes, by the way, we had reference before to the Mabul, to the flood. This also story sounds a little bit like the flood story. So this raven comes, pas kelereshe, and cuts off the head of the snake. Itapicha maya v'havudama. This is like the story in Egypt. Okay, these stories, by the way, reference all sorts of stories that happen to the Jewish people. And probably, I don't know enough about it, but I imagine it also the reference myths that were prevalent in other cultures around from their time. Oftentimes, they're influenced by stories that are rampant in their time. And there are other cultures that they have communication with, and it's very possible that these stories are also part of that genre, as we'll see. So now, what happens in this story? Well, when they cut the head of the snake in the water, there was so much blood, or the tanin, whatever it is, the serpent. All the water turned to blood. Ata tanina chavre. So now a new tanin comes, okay, a buddy of the first one. Shak levitalia levachaya. Now, he took the stone, he put it around the neck of the other snake and brought it back to life. Okay, the head was cut off and yet it comes back to life magically. Again, showing magic powers of this stone. And you see here like a tag team, right? We have one tanin and the other. It sounds a little like a game of tag. You know, you can bring someone back to life. To tag them, they're back in the game. So he brings it back to life. So the raven, this is why I thought it sounded a little bit like the Noach story, because the raven helps, but not enough, because it didn't really work. Now, again, the tanin wants to come swallow up the boat. Comes a bird now, a different bird, doesn't tell us what kind, and cuts off the head. And now we're really done with the snake. That's why it sounded very much like the Noah story. First the raven, when it didn't help, then the dove comes. And then the flood ends. Shaklu alahi, or, he tells us the flood is over. Shaklu alahi even tava. So now the bird took the even, because this is what's obviously important in the story. Who's got the stone? The bird takes the stone. So remember, first it was encircled by the snake. Then they cut off the head of the snake, and then the other snake got the other snake back, and then now the bird cuts off the head of the snake again, and it's unclear which snake. I assume the second one, and then takes it and shadua l'sfinta, and the bird throws it into the boat. Now you think, okay, great, story ends. The humans have the boat now, the stone now, all is good. But what happened? There were these birds that were salted in the boat. Okay, these are dead birds that they were planning to eat. Now they put the stone on top of those birds. I guess they wanted to see, right? This is people get very excited when they see something magical and they want to play with it, right? Now you have to be careful what you play with. This is similar to before. There's something encircling it. Maybe there's a reason. You should avoid it, right? Like the crate. This is not meant for you. Well, be careful what you do with it. They put it on the birds. What happens? Shaklu uparchule bahada. So the birds come back to life. They take the stone and they fly away. And there goes the stone. The stone is no longer in their hands. So again, right, it's like, say, playing with fire or, playing with precious stones. You have to be very careful. Tanu Rabbanan, story from a Brayta. So now we have two rabbis two very famous ones, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Shiur, are on a boat. Rabbi Eliezer yashen v'Rabbi Yoshua ne'ol. So Rabbi Eliezer goes to sleep. Rabbi Yoshua is up. Nizda'azeh, Rabbi Yoshua shakes or makes some big, I can't believe it. Nin'ar, Rabbi Eliezer wakes up. Amar lo, maze Yoshua mipnei man nizda'azata. What happened? What were you going so crazy about? Amar lo, ma'or gadol ra'iti bayam. I saw this great light in the sea. Amar lo, shema einav shel leviathan ra'ita. Perhaps it was the eyes of the leviathan that you saw. Dichtiv einav ka'afafei shachar. He said, maybe you saw the eyes of the leviathan. You could see Rabbi Eliezer was like, I can't believe I missed it, right? FOMO. Fear of missing out, right? I can't believe I missed it. I can't believe I slept. And they say because his eyes are like we translate those words, afafei shachar, like the blinking of the eyes. Let me find that exact translation. His eyes are like the eyelids of the morning. Okay, that's what it is. And maybe that was this great light that you saw. Amar Rav Ashi. So now we're getting to the stories of the leviathan. Okay, soon. Amar Rav Ashi. Amar Lihuna Barnata. One time I was walking in the desert. Okay, not a boat, now in the desert. Okay, I had a calf of a piece of meat with me. I opened it and nikirna here means, one second, right, I took out the chalev and the gid and the. Those are the forbidden parts of the meat. So I took out all the parts that I can't eat in the meat, and I put it on asavim. I put it on this grass, in other words, to burn it, okay, which was, on top of coals. Adimaitina sive, chalam itma. Now I brought these twigs to light up a fire, and all the parts I took out came back, like they healed, as if like it was back to being whole. Vitavinan. One second. Right. And then we'll just get all the lingo here. And then, right. And then we roasted it. That's just Tavina, we roasted it. Ki Hadran, again, we have this coming back. Okay, so basically this miracle happened. Wasn't necessarily a good miracle because they took out the forbidden parts, but now they all came back and they ate it. Or I guess they ate it. It's a little hard to understand why they ate it with the gid and the shed, the sciatic nerve, and the forbidden fats, which they weren't supposed to eat. But maybe because it came back miraculously, they thought it was okay. Not really sure. Or maybe they just didn't eat those parts. When they came back again, this return, the word hadar, when we came back after 12 months, we saw those coals were still glowing. When I went to Amemar, Amarli, Hahi Isva Samtere Hava, Hanu Gomre Deritmahabu. He says, this is what we call samtere. The grass that you use for the fire had it was a special kind of grass which had magical powers, which we call simtere. And the gomrim were from a rotem tree, and they last a really long time. They don't burn out very easily. 12 months is a really long time. But again, these stories likely didn't happen, but they're trying to tell some sort of message. Okay, what kind of message? It's a good question. I don't have a message for all these stories. So now it says that God created it. Already we're talking about the taninim. Now we're going to go off on a tangent about taninim. Hachatirgumu in Babylonia, they translate them as urzile de yama, which in English they call sea oryx. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Zel leviathan nachash bariach leviathan nachash kalaton. The taninim agdolim refer to two different types of leviathans. One is called the leviathan nachash bariach, and one is called leviathan nachash kalaton. Okay, and that appears in a pasuk in Yeshayahu Perek Kaf Zayin. I'll read you the whole pasuk. We're going to darshan it soon. One day God will come in the future and kill with his sword al leviathan nachash bariach va'al leviathan nachash kalaton v'aragat tanin asher bayam, and he will kill the tanin in the sea. It's a bit of a problem with this pasuk because it says that in some future time God is going to kill these two taninim, and then it says though he's going to kill the tanin singular that's in the water. So there's something a little strange here, as if there were two and then there's only one that God has to kill. So we'll see where we go with this. And that's basically a quote from the beginning of this pasuk that I just read you. Now we're going to have a siman for the next few sections. Kol Sha'ah Yarden. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav, Kol ma shebara HaKadosh Baruch Hu ba'olamo, zachar u'nekeva bara'am. Every creature God created male and female. Af leviathan, nachash bariach, leviathan, nachash hakalaton, zachar u'nekeva bara'am. These two types also, there was male and female. Ve'omalenis kakim zelazeh, and if they had mated with each other, machrivin kol ha'olam kulo. It would have destroyed the whole world because this leviathan was all powerful, and if they had mated and there were more of them, would have totally destroyed the world. So what did God do to prevent this? Because they would have made it if it was male and female. We get back to this thing about things that were saved for the righteous people in the world to come. Okay, but let's see first. Let's go from the beginning. God castrated the male and cooled down the I skipped by accident. Yeah, sorry, I just skipped the line right now when I look back. Castrated the male and killed the female. Okay, now you could have said castration would have been enough, but no, God killed the female. And what did he do with the female? Salted it and saved it for the tzaddikim in the future. Okay, the second time we see something that was saved for righteous people in the future, right? That's their reward is going to be in the world to come. It's one of the answers always to tzaddik v'ra. Why do we see bad things happen? Because they get their punishments in this world, but their real rewards are going to be in the world to come. How do we know this? Now there it says the tanin in singular. This means the female. Okay, not the male, just the female. And now there's a reference to another pasuk, which is in Tehillim. There's some assumption here that these behemot in the mountain of thousands. That's what it means. And I wonder how they translate it. Let me just look. On the 1,000 hills. Okay, that's how they translate it, on 1,000 hills. Same thing. They were created male and female, but if they had made it with each other, they would have destroyed the whole world. So what did God do? You're expecting to see the same thing. There's going to be a bit of a difference, and the Gemara is going to ask why. So he castrates the male, and he cools down the female. Now, what does this mean? Could mean freezes her. The commentaries actually say cool down her sexual desire. So she didn't really have much desire, and the male was castrated. And saved, now this is interesting, saved what? It's a little unclear. Saved either the frozen female version, but didn't kill her. So it's a little weird. It doesn't seem like she was saved for them to eat, but saved her for the righteous, saved perhaps the sexual desire for the righteous in the future world, which is also strange because they usually talk that there is no sexual desire in the world to come. So not so clear what this is. But how do we know that this is what he did to them? Okay, this pasuk is from Eov. Okay, meaning the kocho stays in the loins. It doesn't go outside to mate with anyone else. And the ono b'shirei bitno, the desire stays in the female in her insides. In other words, her wombs never open up to have children, and that's the female. By the way, I wanted to connect in the previous, okay, we now have the leviathan, and we have the behemot, b'harei elef. Again, this is, by the way, having the same parallel in land and by sea. And we have where the leviathan is going to be saved for the tzaddikim in the world to come. This, by the way, might remind you, I don't know if you do this, but there's something called the Sudash leviathan, which is the last meal you eat in the sukkah on Hoshana Rabbah. Talks about how in the future there'll be the sukkah of the leviathan, which will be for the tzaddikim, or will be in the world to come. And it's this idea also that the leviathan will serve the humans, right? As opposed to the leviathan destroying in the future time to come, the leviathan will serve. This is connected to the same idea. So the Gemara asks, why didn't they just castrate the male and freeze the female in the previous case, right? Why didn't they do that in the leviathan? That's because dagim pritze. Okay, they were worried that dagim have very strong sexual desire. I'm not sure why they think this. Maybe because by yidgu larov, like fish just multiply much more than others, and because of that, they say their sexual desire is so great that it might not have been enough, and that's why they had to freeze. That's why they had to preserve that. You had to kill the nikeva on the first one, and in the animals, it was okay to keep them alive. Now, why didn't they kill the male instead of the female? It's because the female is tastier, and that's why if they were going to preserve something and kill the other, right? Kill one and preserve it versus keep the other one alive, castrated, better off to castrate the males and keep the females alive so they could be salted, and rather than just killing the females and having the males, killing the males, preserving them, and that would be a different way to resolve it. But it wouldn't be as tasty for the tzaddikim. It's more of a delicacy, the female version. I don't know. I never tasted leviathan. This pasuk that says basically that the leviathan was created to play with God. Now, right? It wouldn't be appropriate for God to have a female companion. Right? This assumes that God is male, and therefore it wouldn't be appropriate. So now they say, why didn't they also do for the same for the animal and kill the female and salt it? Salted meat is not as good. Salted fish are very good. It's something people usually eat, but not really salted preserved meat. When God wanted to create the world, meaning the land, God said to the Sar of the Yam, okay, this sounds a lot like Greek mythology, right? That there's someone in charge of the water. Open your mouth and swallow up all the water in the world. Amar lefanav ribono shel olam, dai shamo b'shali. He says, no, I want to stand on my own. Sorry, not willing to do it. So God immediately killed the Sar of the water. Right? It's not saying there's a god of the water. It's not like Greek mythology, really, but it's saying this idea. There's someone in charge of the water, and right, without this being idol worship or anything else. And so now they take this pasuk from Eov, that with God's strength, he calmed the sea. That's creating basically the Yabasha by kicking the Sarosh Yam. He did that. And B'tfunato, with his wisdom, he crushed Rahav. And they say, what's Rahav? Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Shma Mina. You can learn from this pasuk, Sarosh Yam, Rahav Shmo. The Sar of the Yam, his name was Rahav. Now, what's the problem? The problem is now there's this dead Sar of the Yam in the water. What a stench of dead body forever. So what did God do? There's going to be another drasha from another pasuk. If it weren't for water having covered it, okay, because remember, God said move all the water. So he had to leave water to be able to cover up the Sar of the water. So otherwise people wouldn't be able to survive in this world with the stench. You have to read the continuation of that pasuk. It's a pasuk in Yeshayahu, Perek Yud Aleph. Because the world is full of the knowledge of God. The knowledge of God, from water to body of water, it covers. So what did they darshan from here? That the water covers the yam. That the water covers the Sar, the officer of the sea. And that's why the water covers the dead body of the officer of the sea. That's a drasha on that pasuk. The Jordan River comes from the Pamyas, which is the Banyas. And nowadays it doesn't connect down to the, I'm not sure. It seems from the Korach, they said it doesn't connect. I didn't actually check this, but it no longer connects to the Jordan. But there's water in the Banyas for sure. You can go there and see. Tanya namihachi yarden yotze mimarat Pamyas umahalech b'yama shel Sifri ub'yama shel Tveria. Okay, the water comes from the Banyas. It goes to the Sifri, which they say is the Agama Hula, the Hula lake, and the Yamashal Tveria, which is the Kinneret. Umitgalgil v'yored liyam hagadol, and from there it goes to the Mediterranean. Also, doesn't exactly go from the Kinneret to the Mediterranean, but that's what it says here. Umitgalgil v'yored ad shmigel lepiv shel leviathan, and from there it goes into the mouth of the leviathan. Shneimar yivtach ki yagiach yarden el piu. Okay, this is a pasuk that says that for sure the Yarden is going to get into his mouth, and they say this is the mouth of the leviathan. Matkif la Rabba bar Ulay says, "Hi behemot b'harei elef ktiv." Isn't that pasuk not talking about the leviathan? The pasuk's talking about that animal we were talking about before in the 1,000 hills. Ela Rabba bar Ulay imatai behemot b'harei elef betuchot. Yes, that pasuk was talking about them, but that's because it says lo yachpoz yivtach ki yagiach Yarden el piu. The animal in the hills, in 1,000 hills, will be confident when the water is going into the mouth of the leviathan. Now, this is an interesting thing. What on earth does this mean? So some people say that this means that there's supposed to be a future war between these two creatures, the leviathan and the behemoth. And as long as the leviathan, this is also interesting to think about being in time of war. When the leviathan is drinking water and is happy, so he's not going to war. So the animals and the animal in the mountain hill in this 1,000 hills is very confident when the leviathan is happy and the water is going into the leviathan's mouth. He's not so confident and has to worry when the leviathan's not drinking water and not happy, and that's when war happens more so than not. Okay, now we have a siman for the next section. Yamim Gavriel Ra'ev. Okay, we're not going to get to all this today. Just the Yamim Ki'ata Rav Dimi Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rav Dimi came. He said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. My dechtiv ki hu al Yamim Yisada va'al Naharot Yechoneneha. So what do we say with this pasuk? Al Yamim, the world was created on Yamim and on Neharot. It will be established. So Elu Shiva Yamim Ba'arba'a Neharot Mekifin et Eretz Yisrael. And now we're going to have a list of the rivers that basically border Israel. We're going to have some trouble figuring out what all of them are. Eluhin Shivat Yamim, Yamashal Tveria, Yamashal Stom, that's the Dead Sea. Yamashal Chelat, which they say is what we said before. No, that's not. Chelat, remember what they say Chelat is, 1 minute. Right, Yamashal Chelta, these two are actually much more, the commentaries really don't know exactly what to say with these. Yamashal Sivchi, we said that's the Hula. Yam Aspamia could be in northern Syria. Some people have another explanation that it could be not Aspamia, but Panyas, which is the Banyas, and Yam Gadol, which is the Mediterranean. Eluhen Arba'an Naharot, Yarden v'Yarmuch, v'Kerumyon u'Fega. Okay, Kerumyon and Fega, most people think are in Damascus, in Syria. And the Yarmuch is something that it's a river. You can look it up. It's a known river in Israel. It also goes into Jordan and Syria. Okay, so they say these are the boundaries. Okay, we're going to stop here. We're going to continue with more of these things. I think if we talk about ideas here, by the way, I forgot to mention this, and maybe it's good to mention this in summary. Okay, we basically went through lots of stories. I'm not going to review them, but I am going to review some of the concepts that we saw in these stories. And I think we have this concept of, number one, doing things alone is not always so, like having other people help you. Okay, I don't know if we talked about that too much, but it comes up in a bunch of the stories, first of all, right? That it's the whole idea. It's all of those things together. Going out of your comfort zone often gives you perspective. Having, right, this Arab merchant was showing him all these things. We had it with the bird who helped cut the neck, break the neck of the snake. And help them. In the end, didn't help them because they weren't smart about it. But in the end, they were helped by other people. That you can't always do everything yourself. And you don't always understand everything. So sometimes, if there's a warning sign, stay away from it. Use your intelligence to help you figure things out. And we talked about this connection of the land and the water and the heavens and where these things intersect, and the similarities that maybe there's parallels both in the lands and the heavens and in the water. Maybe we'll continue with these stories tomorrow. Like I said, I'll give you some pointers and directions, but what really these are all doing here, I don't have all the answers to. But it gives you food for thought and things to think about. So wishing everyone a Shabbat Shalom and Shavua Tov.